शन्न इन्द्रो बृहस्पतिः शन्नो विष्णुरुक्रमः नमो ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायो त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्मासि त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्म वदिष्यामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः यश्छन्दसा मृषभो विश्वरूपः छन्दोभ्योऽध्यमृतात् सम्बभूव समेन्द्रो मेधया आस्पृणोतु अमृतस्य देवधारणो भूयासं शरीरं मे विचर्षणं जिह्वा मे मधुमत्तमा कर्णाभ्यां भूरिविश्रुवं ब्रह्मणः कोशोऽसि मेधया पिहितः श्रुतं मे गोपाय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः अहं वृक्षस्य रेरिव कीर्तिः पृष्ठं गिरेरिव ऊर्ध्वपवित्रो वाजिनीव स्वमृतमस्मि द्रविणगुंसवर्चसं सुमेधा अमृतोक्षितः इति त्रिशङ्कोर्वेदानुवचनम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः आप्यायन्तु मम अङ्गानि वाक्प्राणश्चक्षुः श्रोत्रमथो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि सर्वं ब्रह्म उपनिषदं माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्यां मा ब्रह्म निराकरोत् अनिराकरणमस्त्वनिराकरणं मे अस्तु तदात्मनि निरतेय उपनिषत्सु धर्माः ते मयि सन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः वाङ् मे मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविराविर्मयेधि वेदस्य म आनीस्थः श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासीः अनेनाधितेन अहोरात्रान् सन्दधामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारमवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः भद्रं नो अपि वातय मनः ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येम अक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः यो ब्रह्माणं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रहिणोति तस्मै तगुंहदेवमात्मबुद्धिप्रकाशं मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तं तोटकं वार्तिककारमन्यानस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततो मानतोऽस्मि। ॐ विश्वं दर्पणदृश्यमाननगरी तुल्यं निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिर्वोद्भूतं यथा निद्रया यत् साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयं तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये बीजस्यान्तरिवाङ्कुरो जगदिदं प्राङ्निर्विकल्पं पुनः मायाकल्पितदेशकालकलना वैचित्र्यचित्रीकृतं मायावीव विजृम्भयत्यपि महायोगी वयस्वेच्छया तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये यस्यैव स्फुरणं सदात्मकम् असत्कल्पार्थकं भासते साक्षात् तत्त्वमसीति वेदवचसा यो बोधयत्याश्रितान् सर्वस्यत् साक्षात्करणाद् भवेन्न पुनरावृत्तिर्भवाम्भोनिधौ तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नानाच्छिद्रघटोदरस्थितमहादीपप्रभाभास्वरं ज्ञानं यस्य तु चक्षुरादिकरणद्वारा बहिस्पन्दते जानामीति तमेव भान्तमनुभात्येतत् समस्तं जगत् तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये देहं प्राणमपीन्द्रियानपि चलां बुद्धिं च शून्यं विदुः स्त्रीबालान्दजडोपमास्त्वमिति भ्रान्ताभृशं वादिनः मायाशक्तिविलासकल्पितमहाव्यामोहसंहारिणे तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये अथातो ब्रह्म जिज्ञासा जन्माद्यस्य यतः शास्त्रयोनित्वात् तत्तु समन्वयात् So the Brahma Sutra, as we have understood and we are trying to grasp, should be seen as a clear idea of what our life and our nature, our future, our history is all about. It is a complete inventory of ourselves. And it is in some cases a surprise, but in other cases it is simply an explanation of something that we have not inquired into, but we are experiencing it. We are experiencing it, but the nature of the experience has not been inquired into. And to make that inquiry very methodical and complete and clear is the purpose of, really that's the purpose of Vedanta. And the purpose of the Brahmasutra is to summarize that explanation, that clarity, that completeness, that comprehensiveness. I think Swami Ananda had said that really speaking, the Brahma Sutra is like a Supreme Court. which is a human Supreme Court, which is all full of politics and um, you know, taking sides and incompleteness. So there are differences here. This is a complete Supreme Court, clear, without any biases or anything. But the Supreme Court has one quality in it, which is that it should be populated by people that are thinkers, clear thinkers about being able to sort out the various arguments that are given and to come up with a judgment which weighs all the pros and cons of the various arguments and provides a very clear roadmap on what the decision should be. This is what the Supreme Court does, and this is what Brahmasutra does. So I was thinking about it. It's not as though we as human beings are unfamiliar with what the conclusions of Vedanta are. There are some errors that we make, but for much of the part, we are quite conversant, familiar with the basics of our life. It is just that we have not bothered to inquire into the nature of it. So there's a couple of this is a good way to look at it. Okay, so take a look at this. We all know that life as it is would not be possible unless there is some non-changing nature of myself. Our life will not be possible unless I have nityatvam. Aham nitya. I am unchanging. Now this we know, but kind of take it for granted and do not inquire into it unless we are given some hints on how to inquire, which is provided by Vedanta. But what I'm saying is that our life cannot be what it is, unless I am certain about myself as an unchanging entity. I was thinking about it the other day. We actually flew to Southern California a week ago for a family vacation. And I think this is an experience that all of us have, especially if you are familiar with the train journeys in India. This happens all the time, and even in the airlines when you go. So what happens is that you're waiting for the plane to taxi. And you're waiting, you're trying to see, is it late? Is it on time? The pilot announces, okay, I think we are pretty much ready to take off. We're just waiting for some last minute luggage by something like that. And you're waiting in your seat and so on. And you're sitting by the window seat, let's say. Suddenly you see some outside things moving, because the outside things are moving anyway. So they are, there are buses, there are trucks that are carrying luggage, and there's a lot of activity outside. So there's movement. And then what happens is that when you start to move, your plane starts to move, it is so subtle, so smooth that you don't know whether you are moving or is it the outside things that are moving. So there is a moment of confusion, and more than confusion is uncertainty. It's not a problem, but it's uncertainty. You don't know what's moving. And sometimes what happens is that the plane actually is standing still and the outside things are moving. But in some cases, when the plane is actually now taxiing back, what you find is that the outside things apparently are not, which are not moving, you are moving. So then, after a moment, you ascertain, because your your knowledge and your buddhi and your wisdom says, aha, it is the plane moving because it is very continuous, and the outside things are still, because even the buildings seem to be moving, which they are not supposed to be moving. So that means that the plane is moving. Now, same thing happens in trains. If those of you that are familiar with trains, certainly in India, we are all train experiencers. This happens all the time, where whether it's an other train moving or you are moving, you are not sure of until you are able to ascertain that one of them is moving, the other one is not moving. So why I bring that example is that in our life also, there is some confusion about myself. I would say even uncertainty and confusion, resulting in some huge problems. So this inability to distinguish viveka between what is moving and what is not moving amounts to a serious problem for me. What do you mean by a serious problem? So it's like this. As I mentioned before, if you analyze your life, you will find that you cannot have the experiences of your life until you are not moving. Nityaha, aham nityaha. The nityatvam of the Atma should be very obvious. But it isn't. And what happens is that because the Atma, because the Jiva, the human being, the manifestation of the human being is taken to be changing, it amounts to really is a death sentence, because you are uncertain as to what is going to happen. You are moving, and some of the movement is okay, but the direction of the movement is kind of like it's just going to end up in a not a good state. It's kind of like, I remember visiting the Niagara Falls. And in the Niagara Falls, if you go there, you find that there is such a huge movement towards the fall. The whole body of water, the huge river, the lake, is intricately moving towards the fall. And you stand there and you actually hear stories from people on how they somehow lost their footing and they were swept over and died. Well, you sit there and there's a certain fear. Oh my gosh, what happens if somehow, something, you lose your footing and so on. So, in some ways the life is like that. We are moving like a Niagara Fall, And the only difference is we know we are going to fall. We know we're going to die. So this is the consequence of really not being able to do the viveka between what is moving, what is not moving. So now one thing here we should understand is, as I go back to my original statement, that if you think about it, so this is the, we talk about Shiva Lingam. So the Shiva Lingam means the things that allow you to understand the meaning of the word Shiva. The unchanging Brahman is Shiva. And this is what life is all about. That you have to understand the nature of Shiva, of Brahman. And there are hints to allow you to do that. This is what is called Shiva Lingam. Lingyate jnayate yasya iti lingam, by which something is known, is called lingam. Very clear hints. I've given you that example, I don't know in which class, but just to make sure, that there was a person in the village who said that my cow has been lost. And so he goes to the local panchayat head or some police person, I don't know what kind of a police lives in the village, I'm not sure of. In a small village, how can they have an isolated village? Do they have a official policeman? I don't know, but there must be somebody. So anyway, he goes to that person, he says, my cow has been lost. And so the person says, okay, come, let's take a look at it. Where was it? He says, it was right there. I tied it up and it's gone in the morning, and it never goes away more than 50 feet. So the person says, you know what, you're very lucky. We'll find it because it is the rainy season and the ground is very muddy, and we can find the hoof marks and we know exactly which direction the cow will go. And it's not a very large village. We will know exactly where it went. And if there are some footsteps of a human being, we also know that the cow was led. So this is what is called lingam. These are hints, clear hints, that allow you to find the real thing. So Shiva Lingam here also means the Shiva is Nitya. Brahman is Nitya, Sat, Satyam Jnanam Anantam, Satyam, Nitya, it does not move at all. And if you examine our own lives, we find we are Nitya. In fact, as I mentioned before, as I stated before, not mentioned but even stated, that life will not be possible unless the Atma is Nitya. Just think about it. If you are not the same, you cannot string together your whole life. What an obvious thing it is. So you are there as a baby. As you grow up, you're a different person altogether. Then as you grow up further, you are completely different. Every day, in fact, every day is changing. How can you conduct your life? You cannot remember who you were. This way we know I was born on such and such day. It's the same person trying to recollect. In fact, you go to sleep and you wake up in the morning, different person. You won't be able to recognize anyone. Others will not be able to recognize you. There is a certain sameness which oversees all the changes. See, this is the thing, very clear. We all know that we are Nitya. We all know that we are Satyam. We all know that we are Jnanam. Because really the whole life is nothing but jnanam, jnanam, jnanam. It's all knowledge. Thoughts are knowledge. Ascertainment is knowledge. It's all knowledge. That I was a child is also a knowledge. That I am the same person is also knowledge. It is awareness. And it's the same awareness. It's not as though your awareness also changes. Sometimes it is black in color. Sometimes it is yellow in color. No. It's guna atitaha, guna rahita. No any qualities or anything. It's just pure jnanam, knowledge, I know. So am I not only nityaha, I'm also jnanam, satyam jnanam, satchid ananda. I am sat and I am chit. Now let's look at the third one, which is ananda. This is really the amazing thing to just, all I'm doing is that these are Shivalingams. And I because I am not thinking straight, I do not know that these are clear hints for my immortality. So I'm just clinging to my mortality because I'm used to it, and everybody else also says, yes, you are going to fall over the Niagara Falls one of these days. Everybody is kind of like inevitable fall over the Niagara Falls. If you ever go and stand there, it's a very scary scene, really. I remember just standing there and I say, oh my God, what a powerful force of water that's pulling you in that direction. And you're gone. Similarly, life appears to be pulling in that direction, and it's like a permanent Niagara Fall for everybody, or some other big fall. So let's look at the last one, which is Ananda. Again, it's a very clear Shivalinga. Very clear Shivalinga. How? We've already looked at the Shivalinga for Sat. We've already looked at the Shivalinga for Chit. Now let's look at the Shivalinga for Ananda. Do we not know that all beings are basically happy? Fundamentally, it's Ananda Swarupa. Do we not know that? If you say, well, I don't know, just think about it. Don't we know that the Ananda is the natural state of all beings? Leave aside animals for the time being. Let's just look at human beings. Don't we know this? How can we challenge it? When you see a person crying, you immediately find, why is he crying? Why shouldn't he be crying? If our nature is not Ananda, then somebody is crying, somebody is laughing, everybody seems to be okay. No. If somebody is uncontrollably laughing, then you can say, what's happening to you? Is it some joke or something? But to have a Ananda, a satisfied feeling, is a very natural one. Your own self. When you're happy, you're not disturbed. But if you are unhappy, you feel why? Why am I unhappy? There must be some reason for it. So don't we know that the nature of all human beings is Ananda? We know it. We expect everybody to be happy. We expect it. Why? Because it's not though, this is the thing. The the parents, they don't have to teach the children. You need to be happy. They can teach the children you need to be clean. You need to eat well. All those kinds of things. But does any mother says, do you know, baby, you need to be happy? The baby knows by itself. In fact, the moment it is crying, tells there is something not quite right with me, as it should be. Shivalingam. This is Shivalingam for all three basic aspects of my life. What more do we want? I am Satyam Jnanam Anantam. I am Sat, Chit and Ananda. And this is not somebody teaching me. That teaching part hasn't started yet. This is self-recognized. That I cannot function in my life unless I'm the same person. That I know that I am the same person. And that I know that I am basically Ananda Swarupa. Amazing things, even if you look at the body, the human body or all bodies, the human body, it is self-repairing. It's Ananda Swarupa. You cut your finger and blood flows out. You don't need to do anything. Unless it is such a big, deep wound that it cannot possibly repair itself. There is something, it's like a tire having become punctured. But for most part, the body is self-repairing. Blood flows, clotting starts. Pain is given to the mind. Hey, be careful. Something going on here. We don't expect you to do much, but don't make it any worse. Pain. And then you find that the blood, after flowing for a while, clots. And the outside things are prevented. A new skin comes in, and then after a while it is gone. Same thing with all other parts of the body. Ananda Swarupa. So now comes the teaching. This is where the entry of Vedanta and the summarization of Brahmasutra comes in. It is not to tell you the basic aspects of it. Because as I mentioned, the basic aspects I should know. But you know what? I don't. I should know what is standing, what is moving. I should know that the plane can move, but the building cannot move. I should know that. But in some temporary confusion, everything seems to be moving. Temporary. Here in our life, it should be very clear that the Atma, like a building, cannot move. The human being, the thoughts, the body, the sense organs, all aspects of it are moving. But the Atma does not move. And you should be able to ascertain this because you cannot live your life until this happens. You cannot tell that the body is moving unless you are still. Nityatvam of the Atma. So what Vedanta does is to straighten out our thinking. It's a confused thinking not inquired into. So what Vedanta does, and what Brahmasutra does it even to a better view, is to summarize and say, don't you see this? And then we have doubts about it. So we say, you're right, I should be able to figure out that I am Nitya. But then, you know what? I cannot be totally Nitya. This is what is called apekshikam satyam. Apekshikam means relatively I am still. But totally I am not still. I am not Nitya. Why aren't you Nitya totally? Because I was not born before a certain date. How do you know you're not born before a certain date? Well, that should be pretty obvious because I was not a baby before this taking up this. So Vedanta, as you know, will say, I'm not talking about the Atma being born. I'm not talking about the baby being born. I'm talking about the Atma being unborn. Oh, well, it's the same thing. No, it's not. So there is some clarification that is done by Vedanta. Because I have hints that I am Nityaha. But it is apekshikam nityam, no paramarthikam nityam. So Maheshanand ji had given a very beautiful example of this. He says, apekshikam nityam, nityatvam, the relative truth, it's kind of like a currency used in a country. Beautiful, very beautiful example. It's like a currency being used. How? Because, it's very possible at some time in the history, then there was no common currency which was agreed to by the people living in the country. Because that requires a lot of things. It requires a kind of like a king or a leader or somebody who says, okay, from now on, all of us are going to use this currency. So it requires all of that. So before that, people would do to barter. Okay, I'll give you this, you give me this. And so now we are even. Or I give you this, but you have not given me enough, so you owe me some next time. I owe you. And then gold or some other precious metal was used as a currency. Gold coins and so on, which doesn't lose its value. But now we have currency. So it's a better example of rupee than the dollar. So let's look at rupee. So Indian rupee, and I'll tell you why we are taking rupee. Because the rupee is a proxy currency. It's a proxy wealth. So you can take your wallet out and you can say, okay, I have 1,000 rupees and 100 rupee notes. And then you can buy so-and-so. You can go and get a medicine or food or something like this. It works. So this is what is called apekshika nityatvam. It is relatively true. Relatively true means relatively useful. But it is not paramarthikam nityatvam. As you know, this has happened a few times. The last time, Modi ji decided he is going to demonetize the whole currency. Okay, so 1,000 rupee notes were gone, 500 rupee notes were gone, smaller notes were left. You go to the bank and he says, no good anymore. So it is relatively true. And more than that, as is the experience of anybody who travels outside of India. That's why I took the example of Indian rupee rather than the dollar. You go outside, you go to Dubai, first stop. I remember my first trip out of India in 1964. And when I came to the US, this is the first time I flew in a plane. First plane trip from Calcutta, and I was going to fly to Hong Kong, and the first stop was Rangoon. And just a small stop in Rangoon. For the first time, I came out of the country and I could not use the currency. I mean, I was told, it's not as though it was a surprise to me, but the feeling that my familiar currency note is no good. Anyway, so this is what is called apekshika satyatvam. So, in that manner, how even if we know that we are Satyam Jnanam Anantam, which we should, this is a very strong hint. We don't even think about that part like I was mentioning before, that life is not possible unless I have Nityatvam. Life is not possible unless I have Chittatvam. Life is not possible unless I have Anandatvam. Not possible. But I just take it for granted. Why? Because it looks like I don't realize that this is apekshika satyatvam. What Vedanta does is to extend it. It does not give me something unfamiliar. It says, do you know your nityaha is not apekshika nityatvam, it is paramarthika nityatvam. It is not vyavaharika nityatvam. What is seen to be vyavaharika nityatvam is really paramarthika nityatvam. Same thing with jnanam and ananta. This I don't know. How can that be true? Because I was born and I'm going to die and all of that, so I cannot understand paramarthika nityatvam. Vedanta says, yes. Let me show you why. It's because you're taking the wrong person to be yourself. Just like you don't take your dreamer to be yourself, really speaking, similarly here also, your status as a human being here is just an assumed status. It's like acting in a play. You have a certain personality because of what you surround yourself with. There's nothing to do with who you really are. So what is apekshika satyatvam in fact is paramarthika satyatvam. And the paramarthika satyatvam is not peculiar to you. It is a very Brahman. It is a very Ishvara. Everybody has paramarthika satyatvam. So all of that is revealed. It's a revelation. So the revelation means, so this is the point that I'm just trying to establish in this way, in this line of thinking. I don't know, I was just, before taking up the Brahmasutra trend, I thought that I would bring up this point. And so this is not a revelation in the sense that it is unknown to me. It's a clarification. Yeah, that's the word I would like. It's clarify. It is pretty much like, this person who had lost his cow and was pretty sure it has been stolen. Because it has happened before. This is what happens in a big village. You lose, your cattle get stolen. Cattle is a big wealth. And so he knew it was stolen, but he did not know how to find it. The hoof marks were there. I mean, normally a wise Villager would probably know it anyway. But just from the standpoint of the story, let's say it's a young adult, 20-year-old adult who lives alone. He doesn't know yet that there are hoof marks that will. So he sees the hoof marks, but he cannot decipher it yet because that thinking ability has not come yet. This is our situation in life. The hoof marks about Satchidananda are there, but I don't know how to interpret it. And I misinterpret it. Anyway, I didn't mean to spend that much time, and this is going to continue for a while. But it's a good revision of the importance of Brahmasutra. So, in fact, I can say that if a person were to say, very interesting, that the apekshika satyatvam is based on paramarthika satyatvam. How? So that there is a certain hope and enthusiasm that should come, that what I thought was an open and shut case about my mortality is not such an open and shut case. It is worth inquiry. There is a possibility. How? I want to really know this. It's not an ordinary thing. You know, we are excited about small things. You know, what stock to buy. There's some new energy stock that has come in. It is sure to be very successful. We get excited about it. Oh, good. Some new company. Elections. Small things. But when it comes to my own possibility of immortality, it's not a small thing. And so there should occur. It doesn't. This is the thing. A big thing requires a big mind. An open, hugely open mind, which most of us do not possess. But if it should happen, it should really get very exciting. This is so important. This is what is called Athato Brahma Jigyasa. This is the very first one. We've gone through all of that. I'm not going to repeat it. Ataha Brahma Jigyasa. To know Brahma, to know Paramarthika Satyatvam. My own, not conditional Satyatvam, but real Satyatvam. Not the conditional currency, but the fact that I am Jyotirmaya, I am the gold. I am not a fake currency. So the human being is a fake currency. The human being goes around. Just look at the fakeness of the currency. It is currency, all right. How is it currency? Because of the stability, Satyatvam. You are the same person. Life will not be possible if you were not the same person from night to day to night to day within a life. There are some changes, but in and through the changes you can tell. So it's a currency, but it is not a dependable currency. It is a very interesting thing because whenever some death comes in the family, especially untimely death of young people. It's total confusion. Total, how can this person who is living in a moment and responding and helping and so on and so forth is gone? Here Swami Ananda used to say that. He says, these are opportunities. Anytime you see a death in anywhere close to you, this should be a great opportunity for you to start the study of what's going on in life. But it doesn't. Swami Dayanand used to say, this was the topic of what is called Vairagya. So, Vairagya means desirelessness, just vigataha ragaha yasya, it is called viragaha tasya bhavam iti vairagyam. And so you don't have any, you don't worry about small things here and there. So this was the topic. So he used to say that, there are vairagyam, there is what is called smashama vairagyam. Smashama vairagyam means the vairagyam that comes from a death of somebody around you. And so he used to act it out. Swami Dayananda was great in acting out things and so on. So he says, here was this person who was all very involved in business and so on and so forth. And suddenly his best friend died. And he went to the funeral and to the burning pyre of his friend. And he says, oh my God, I cannot believe he's gone. How can this happen? What is this whole life all about? And you know what? We are so silly. We are just worrying about small things and this, that, or the other, getting hurt by what people say to us and not being appreciated and so on and so on. What a small, trivial thing. This is really big. I am not going to be worried about small things here and there from now on, because this is vairagya. This is one type of vairagya, smashana vairagya. Swamiji used to say, this is not real vairagya. Why? Because it's a matter of just hours, if not minutes, where this vairagya is just going to go. In fact, he used to act it out. He says, he would come back from the funeral ceremony and walk in, and he finds that there is a chair left out in the front yard of his house. And he gets mad at the domestic help. Didn't I tell you to put the chair back into the... you don't listen to me at all. I don't understand this. I'm paying you so much. He gets mad at something so trivial. But what happened to that vairagya of your son, your friend dying and all of that? He says, this smashana vairagyam is just a fake vairagyam. The true vairagyam comes from jnana. When you discover who you are, that I am okay the way I am, and really the outside things are just small dream-like things that are perturbing, it has nothing to do with it, then you turn the attention to what the real stuff is. This is vairagya. So anyway, so we should get some... So what I was saying was that Swamiji also used to say that yes, if there is a death of somebody close by, this is a great opportunity given by Ishvara for you to start the process of of understanding the difference between fake and the real. So you are a fake currency. You are a currency, all right. But In Hindi, in Hindi in India say chalta hai. Chalta means chalti ka naam gaadi. It's just somehow the currency works somehow or the other. You just take some pieces of paper and this is called fake, but it is a currency. But really, you are not fake, you are the real gold, which is Paramarthika Satyam. And so do you know how you are the Paramarthika Satyam? Do you want to know this? Yes, I do. So this is what is called Athato Brahma Jigyasa. And then it is taken up further that really in this Brahman, the whole thing Janmadhyasya Yataha. Because everything you want to know? Alright, okay. Are you listening? Yes. You see, the whole world comes and goes as an adhyaropa, as just a superimposition, untouching the very adhisthana. And so all this teaching is then given and so on and so forth. Okay. So I was looking at the watch. We still have 20 minutes, so I think we have some substantial time to pick up the thread on where we are. So let's do that. So now we are in the, as you know, in the fourth sutra, Tattu Samanvayat, and in the fourth sutra we are focusing on the word tu. So Adi Shankara's commentary, Bhashya on this, goes into great length on understanding, on explaining what the word tu means. So tu means that all the doubts and possible objections to what is being taught is now being tackled and removed. This is what is called Vyavritti Artham. Vyavritti means not this. This is not the way you should look at it. Now, in looking at wrong things, again, I think I'll follow the same methodology that I started with in terms of Vedanta explaining the Paramarthika Nityatvam, etc. Same methodology. Now let's see. How? Because we should not look upon. So this is an important thing to do. In the study of Vedanta, in the study of Brahmasutra in particular, we are not interested in a debate for the sake of debate. And this is very, very common to the Vedika thinking. We don't want to dominate to say that the other ways of looking at it are totally wrong. We're not interested in doing that. We are not proselytizing. We're not fighting. We are secure in what we understand. But we use the incorrect way of looking at things as an examination of our own understanding. So here, in examining the Purva Paksha, it should be understood. It's not as though we say the Purva Paksha should just be because you know what? Just like everybody else who thinks about this as Apekshika Satyatvam, people are going to look upon it with some doubts. That's fine. And in fact, our own mind also has the same doubt. Because if we now look up So I'm going to now start with the thread that we did last week. If you look at what the Purva Mimamsa says, Purva Mimamsa says that there are Siddha Bodhaka Vakyas and Karya Bodhaka Vakyas, right? In Vedanta, in Vedas. So you see this. So Siddha Bodhaka Vakya is Ayam Atma Brahman. Brahman and you are one and the same. Tat Tvamasi. Aham Brahmasmi. This is called Siddha Vakya Bodhaka Vakya. This is a statement of facts. And then there is Kriyarthaka Vakya. And then if you want to Swarga Kama Yajeta, if you want to go to Swarga, here's what you need to do. It's called Karya, to be done. So these are the two types of Vakyas. And he goes in to prove that Siddha Bodhika Vakyas are useless unless you do something. Now, the point I wanted to make was, just like the same methodology that we used in the beginning of the Apekshika Satyatvam, the same methodology applies here. Why? Because if you look at the normal, healthy human being, good thinking human being, we also have the same tendency. We also say, tell me what to do. Just telling me that I am Atma Brahma, it doesn't do anything for me. But if you say you do the following puja and also close your eyes and do some meditation, that seems to help a little bit. Yes. This is what all the Buddhism and Jainism and all kinds of, I was just talking to a friend of mine just a couple of days. So there is a sect in Hinduism, sect called Radhaswami. And it's very interesting because on my father's side, they are adherents of Radhaswami. My father himself was not really very much into it. He was really more of a scientist and an engineer and very skeptical. To his last day, he was not a very religious person. He was spiritual, all right, but not a religious person. But his whole family used to follow this called Radhaswami. And Radhaswami has two branches. So one is in Agra, which is where my father's family used to be. In fact, my father's older brother, who was studying, as I think I mentioned you to this is just a separate incident in my life, in our lives, that my father's older brother, who I remember so well, wonderful Mahatma, wonderful person, was studying as a law student in Lahore. And he was already married by then and had one or two children, I believe, when he was a senior student of law school in Lahore. Very well-educated person. One day, on a lecture, some Swami from the Radhaswami sect came and impressed him so much. Just like when I heard Swami Chinmayananji, the same issue. I got an insight into the whole thing, which is unbelievable. Similarly, my Tayaji, my uncle, got the same inspiration from a person. So much so that he called his father and he said, I am quitting law school and I am moving in with this person. And he did. He spent all his life in Agra, living as in a monastery, doing all the. He used to work. He was the clerical staff of this person and do a lot of work on the office, and also they were farmers. and so lived a very simple life. And I visited him 2 or 3 times when I was young. What a wonderful person he was. And to support his family, my father had to actually give some money. His other brother also had to give some money, and somehow they supported their family as well. And so this is the Radha Swami. Same thing was going to happen to me. My father also came and said, "Oh my gosh, you remind me of my own brother, and you're also abandoning life." I said, "No, no, I'm not abandoning life. I'm coming back after the study." They said, "No, no, you're not going to come back." And I wanted to prove him wrong, so I did come back. Anyway, so this Radha Swami is also the same. They have, somebody was telling me that they're the one from Bias, they have a second branch in Bias in Punjab, and their big Swami came to California in uh, somewhere in Marin County, and they had like 3,000 people, and so popular. Just recently, Petaluma, yeah, they came in Petaluma, that was the name of the city, and more than half of the people were Westerners. And the reason I'm mentioning that is that um, something to be done, very popular. What is to be done becomes very popular. You tell me what to do. Okay, shall I tell you what to do? Yes, please. Yes, I'm following you. Okay. Sit like this. Okay, I sit like this. Now close your eyes and do some pranayama. Okay, good, good, good. I feel good. Okay. Then chant the following things. Om Namo Narayanaaya. Om Namo Narayanaaya. So I do that. In Radha Swami, they have their own some stuff. Radha Swami. I remember when I was a youngster, there used to be a singer in these, because sometimes we would have a satsang in our home, or my uncle's home, really not our home, but in my uncle's home. And there would be some very beautiful singers. I remember there's one song that has stayed with me all these years, like, I don't know, 60 years or 70 years when I was, 10 years old or something. And I remember this little song has stayed in my, just one line I'll sing. Karunariti Radha Swami. Karunariti Radha Swami. Tvam Param Akar. Tvam Param Akar. Whenever you do some chanting, you singing, and you feel this is good. I feel I'm not worried about my office, my food, this, that, or the other. This is wonderful. So you say, this is good to do. What else should I do? So then there are instructions. You do this, you do that, you help others. And many of those instructions are wonderful, like in the case of Jains, to eat vegetarian food and to avoid himsa of any kind, be ahim. Very good. But the point is that it is all to do. And to do seems very attractive because it seems to lead to some results. But to say that Ayam Atma Brahman, it doesn't seem to really do anything for me. So anyway, all I'm saying is that the taking up of the Purva Paksha by Adi Shankara, simply it is not to criticize others, but it is to help ourselves to distinguish between what is the difference between Kriya and Siddha, and to clarify this for our own benefit. So this is what it is being done. So really all I'm saying is that the Brahma Sutra and the entire Vedanta doesn't do something totally different, but it gives shape to understanding the lingam in our lives. That's all the point I'm making. Okay, with that, let's now, in the next 6 minutes, pick up the thread a little bit. So, in the review of all the Purva Pakshas, Sankhya, Yoga, and Vaisheshika, etc., here we are examining the Purva Paksha given by the Purva Mimamsaka, Karmakanda. So in Karmakanda, which is the Kumarila, which is the basic approach of the Karmakanda is that the Vedas are really meant for Kriya. And if it is not Kriya, it is not useful at all. So don't even think about it. And therefore, the Vedanta is not very useful. Why is it not useful? Because it talks about something which is already established, and we know that the knowledge is useful as something to be done, but not by itself. Okay, so this is what everybody says. Now we said that there are two strands of Karmakandins. One is called the Bhatta Mata, Kumarila Bhatta. And the other one is Prabharaka. They were unified up to this point that Kriya Arthatvam is the only one, Siddhi Arthatvam doesn't make any sense for all the reasons that we saw. But now they start to differ a little bit, just a little bit. So let's go into that. So the question is that there are Jnanakanda, sentences are there, you cannot dismiss it because they are all part of the Vedas. So they are there. The question is, and we saw some of the usefulness of it because it gives you a certain enthusiasm that you are like Brahman. And you're just like telling a child, my God, you are a lion. He's not a real lion, but just makes him feel good. Oh, wow. You're so brave. So similarly here he says that the Jivatma, you're Paramatma. It's not like you're really Paramatma, but it makes you feel a little better. So you go to the temple and do something. And so up to now that were common. Now there is a difference between Bhatta Mata and Prabharaka. What are the differences? He says both of them believe that the Jnanakanda sentences need to be connected to Kriya Pada Vakya sentences. Somehow there needs to be a connection between them. What type of connection there is, is what distinguishes one from the other. So in the case of Bhattamatha, he says they are not connected to any one particular one. All Jnanakanda uh, Vakyas are connected to all Karmakanda Vakyas. They're all intricately connected. And doesn't really matter. This is just an enthusiasm. Whether you tell some person you are very like a lion, or you tell the person you are like a tiger, doesn't matter. It's all enthusiasm anyway. It doesn't matter. They're all interconnected. Prabharaka says no. It is not as messy as you turn out to be. In fact, there are methods of connecting Jnanakanda to only those karmakandas that are upasana based. See, upasana is also a kind of a karma. It's a mental karma. So upasana means that you can sit in your own home and visualize Brahman and then do puja either through words or through thoughts or anything. You don't have to physically do any kind of a puja. That's all what upasana does. So they say that the Prabharaka people say that the Jnana Kanda is only associated with Upasana Kanda, not the general Karma Kanda. And so Upasana is Karya Vakyani only, and therefore the Jnana Kanda is connected to only Upasana Karya Vakyani, not pure Karma Vakyani. So then they say, oh, this is what makes sense. Because Aham Brahmasmi is not a Siddha Bodhaka, it is an Upasana Besaka. I am Brahman. You should feel really good about it. Brahmavit Brahma eva bhavati. That one who knows Brahman becomes Brahma. It is just an Upasana, just a kind of like an enthusiasm. Atma ityeva upasita. It's kind of like, this is I think the best way to look at it, you brainwash yourself. You keep on repeating, your thoughts will go away. I was just talking about the Radha Swami. That's one of the things I wanted to mention. I recall this from even talking to my own uncles and so on and so forth when I was a youngster. My own uncle who was... So I said, so then what happens to you? He said, there is some kind of a blue light. So I mentioned this to my friend who had attended the session in Petaluma recently. And they said, yes, they still talk about blue light because that's a very fundamental part of it. Of course, once when I met Swami Chinmananji and Swami Dayanandji, then I was never really much into Radha Swami anyway. But now I got established into Sanatana Dharma, and I never really looked into it very much, and I don't want to because I don't think that's the real thing. But anyway, they all talk about a blue light. So you do this, so it's like a brainwashing yourself, and you visualize a light and you see it. Okay, so you see it. So our question now is, so what? You see it. So okay, it's like a siddha, some kind of a very advanced yoga that happens. You can do that. But so what then you do? Oh, you then merge into it. Merge into it? How? Then also you have to open your eyes. And then you're hungry. And you have to go to the bathroom. Can you see the blue light? No, at that time you won't see the blue light. When you're eating, no. So then the blue light disappears. So then how do I... Then you get back to it. How long do I have to keep on doing it? All those questions are given. So anyway, so this is what the Prabharaka people say, is that Jnana Kanda Vakyani are useful for upasana. This is what they say. You brainwash yourself. So we say no. So I was hoping to start the Siddhanta today, but we went into this long way of looking at the way the Vedanta and Brahmasutra works, and so we spent a lot of time on it. So we will not get into it to Siddhanta. Our view of why Siddha Bodhaka Vakya is the real thing, not the Karya Bodhaka Vakya. So up until now we were simply espousing their cause. Now we have to answer, and we will do that in the next class. Om. Oh, I have to finish the second part of the Dakshinamurti Stotra. Rahu grasta divankarendu sadisho maya samachadana sanmatra karanopasamharnato yo bhut sushuptav puman pragaswapsamiti prabodha samaye yappratyabhigyayate tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Balyadishu api jagradadishu tatha sarvasvavasthasvapi vyavrittasvanuvartamanamahmityantaspurantam sada swatmanam prakatikaroti bhajatam yo mudraya bhadraya tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Vishwam Pashyati Karya Karanataya Swaswami Sambandhataha Shishyacharya Tathaiva Pitra Putradhyatmana Bhedataha Swapne Jagrati Vaya Esha Purusho Maya Paribhramitaha Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Bhurambhamsya nalo nilo vambaramaharnartho himamshuf puman ityabhati characharatmakamidam yasyaiva murtyashtakam nanyat kinchana vidyate vimrishatam parasmat yasmat parasmat vibhoho tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Sarvatmatvamiti sputikritamidam yasmatamushminstave tenasya shravanat tadarthamananat dhyanat cha sankirtanat sarvatmatvamahavibhuti sahitam syadishwaratvam swataha siddhyetat punarashtadha parinatam Chaishwaryamavyahatam Ashubhani nirachaste Tanoti shubhasantatim Smriti matrena yat pumsam Brahmatan mangalam param Ati kalyana rupatvat Nitya kalyana samshayat Smartranam varadatvat Cha brahmatan mangalam viduhu ओंकारश्चाथ शब्दश्च द्वावेतौ ब्रह्मणः पुरा कंठं भित्वा विनिर्यातौ तस्मान् मांगिलकौ बुभौ ओमथ 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 ओम असतो मा सत्कमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. If the sun of Atma Vidya rises, oh, this is the wrong one, sorry. Good to see you all. Next week, we are going to do the Zoom call, if you recall, on the 2nd of October. And I'll send you instructions as soon as I talk to in more detail to Chawla Joshi, who's going to be hosting it. So we will actually hold a class next week and then have an opportunity to do satsang, longer satsang based on Zoom. So my guess is that we will do it from say about 8 to maybe 8:50 or 8:55 local time, and then spend 20 to 25 minutes, maybe half hour even, for a more in-depth satsang with you. So I'll send you information regarding that. So look forward to seeing you next.